Good evening. In Washington, D.C., the federal government of the United States has entered a partial shutdown after Congress failed to pass the necessary funding legislation. The funding lapse took effect at 00:01 EDT on October 1, 2025, after the Senate blocked a stopgap spending bill. With no agreement in place, many non-essential federal operations have been suspended, marking a major disruption to government services and triggering concern about economic fallout and public impact. What happened? The immediate cause of the shutdown is the failure of lawmakers, both Republicans and Democrats, to agree on a continuing resolution (CR) or stopgap funding measure that would allow the government to keep running while full appropriation bills were negotiated. In the House of Representatives, the Republican drafted CR passed, but when it reached the Senate, it fell short of the required 60 votes to advance. Senate Democrats opposed the measure, arguing it lacked funding for key health care subsidies and other policy priorities. As a result, funding expired and a shutdown commenced. Scope and scale of the shutdown. This government funding lapse is significant. According to multiple sources, the shutdown began October 1, 2025, and is now the longest in U.S. history, having stretched for weeks without resolution. It is estimated to have affected roughly 900,000 federal employees who were furloughed, and perhaps 2 million more working without pay, as reported by the open-source data. Certain services remain operational. For example, Social Security benefits, Medicare and Medicaid will continue, and essential personnel, such as military and law enforcement, remain on duty, but many functions are shut or severely limited. The shutdown thus represents a partial cessation of government operations, impacting many agencies and services. Impact on the public and economy. The implications are broad and serious. Many federal agencies have scaled back operations. For example, the lack of funding has resulted in the delayed publication of key economic data, affecting policy makers, markets, and businesses. Air traffic control, passport and visa processing, national park maintenance, and other services are facing disruptions or limitations. Federal workers are either furloughed or working without immediate pay, creating hardship and reducing consumer spending. There is risk of output loss in the economy. Economists estimate that such shutdowns shave off a portion of GDP while they last. Public confidence in government is also impacted when basic services stagnate and the political cost is high. For example, one agency, the National Park Service, saw many sites closed or operating without staff, cleaning and maintenance deferred, visitor safety and infrastructure concerns mounting. State governments and local businesses that rely on federal funding and workforce are also feeling the strain. Political blame game, and behind the scenes behind the shutdown is a stalemate in Congress. On one side, Republicans argued for a clean CR, that is, pure funding without additional conditions or new policy mandates. On the other side, Democrats insisted that any extension of funding include protections for health care subsidies and other social programs, which they contend are non-negotiable. Senate Democrats blocked the Republican drafted bill multiple times, citing concerns it would force them to forego long-term guarantees for the vulnerable. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and others maintained that the House of Representatives has done its part, passing the CR, but the Senate must act. President Donald Trump has weighed in, saying the shutdown is no way to run a country, and supporting a congressional deal. Still, neither party appears clearly victorious. Public opinion polls show a roughly even split in blame between Republicans and Democrats. What happens next? Negotiations are ongoing. There are efforts in the Senate to pass a compromise funding bill that would reopen the government, albeit temporarily. Even if a short-term deal is reached, the longer-term challenge remains. Congress still has not completed the 12 full-year appropriations bills required under U.S. law. Experts warn that unless there is a structural change in how appropriations are managed and how policy demands are tied to funding bills, the risk of future shutdowns or reliance on continuing resolutions, CRS remains high. For millions of federal workers, they await back pay, reinstatement to full duties, and clarity on when this will end. For the American public, the hope is that service disruptions will be resolved swiftly. Why it matters globally and domestically. A government shutdown undermines confidence in the federal government's ability to function. For individual Americans, it means delayed services, uncertainty, and economic stress. On a broader scale, the U.S. government's fiscal processes and credibility can impact markets, global investors, and international partners. It also raises questions about how modern democracies fund the state, especially in the face of partisan polarization. The shutdown is a stark example of how failure to compromise can paralyze core government operations. Conclusion: in summary, the U.S. federal government has shut down after Congress failed to pass the necessary funding legislation, triggered by a breakdown in negotiations and partisan conflict. Many federal operations are suspended or scaled back. Hundreds of thousands of workers are affected, and the economic and social consequences are mounting. While a deal may be on the horizon, the underlying structural issues remain unresolved, meaning this is not just about one shutdown, but about how government funding and policy making operate in a deeply divided political climate. We will continue to monitor developments in Congress and across federal agencies, bringing you updates as they emerge. Thank you for joining us.